Today I'm going to be brewing one of the most drinkable old school beers you can possibly brew. Hi, I'm Daryl Smith. I'm a home brewer in the UK, and on this channel I share with you my experiences of being a home brewer, and I share with you fun and rewarding things that you can try out making at home too. So after my recent success of re-evaluating how I brew and learning how to actually use a pH meter, I've been really excited to brew more beers and see if I can make them better thanks to getting my mash pH right. So I fell upon brewing Irish red ale. I have to be completely honest, the original plan was that I would have posted this video closer to St. Patrick's Day, but I've had a lot going on and I actually wasn't able to bottle this until after St. Patrick's Day had been and gone. But why should we only enjoy Irish red ale one time a year? Because it's actually a really delicious type of beer. So an Irish red ale is very close to an English bitter. They're both quite balanced types of beer, so they're not too malty, not too hoppy. One of the main things that sets apart a Irish red ale to a English bitter is the use of roast barley. More often you see roast barley in things like stouts, which gives stouts their kind of iconic dark colour. Used in very small quantities, roast barley can actually give your beer a red hue. And actually Guinness officially say that Guinness is red, and that's because of the roast barley. If you look at Guinness in the right light, you'll see it's not actually black as such. I mean, it is black, but it's also red. So yeah, get it in the right light. It's black, but also red. So anyway, in this recipe, I actually use Pilsner malt instead of Maris Otter. I think you'd more often see Maris Otter appearing in a red Irish ale, but I've got some Amber Malt and I've no idea why I brought it in the first place, but I need to use it up and it's quite biscuity. So I thought if I put it into this beer alongside Pilsner Malt, I could still end up with kind of Maris Otter-y flavors, but still use up this malt that I need to not waste. You might want to alter this recipe if you're making it and get rid of the Amber Malt and just use Maris Otter as your base malt. As you'll see later, I'm quite pleased with how this recipe turned out, so maybe you should just brew it how I did. But experimentation is a massive part of home brewing, so stick in whatever you want and call it a red ale. I don't really mind, so long as it's a decent beer at the end of the day. Anyway, let's get brewing. As always, the first thing I did was to put 31 litres of water into the kettle and then added half a Camden tablet. I left this for 30 minutes so to extract all the chlorine. My tap water is naturally very close to the London water profile, and so it suits balanced styles of beer like this without any alterations to the water's chemistry. You may want to alter your water's chemistry depending on what profile you have. I then started heating the water up to my target temperature of 71 degrees. Whilst I was waiting for the water to heat up, I grabbed my grains. For this recipe, I used 3.15 kilograms of Pilsner malt as a base malt, 1.1 kilograms of Munich malt for flavour, 250 grams of Europils for flavour, 240 grams of Flaked Barley for body, 100 grams of Amber Malt to add a biscuity flavour and to darken the beer, and 50 grams of roasted barley. Using such a small quantity gives the Irish red ale its iconic red colour. Whilst the water was heating up, I also prepared my hop additions, both of which were Fuggle. The first was 30 grams for the start of the 60-minute boil. The second and final hop addition was 35 grams of Fuggle, which were added 15 minutes before the end of the boil. My last bit of prep was to measure out the yeast nutrient and Irish moss, following the manufacturer's instructions, though adding a little bit of extra yeast nutrient because I'm using Kveik yeast. The full recipe is in the description. And if you're enjoying this video, then please do give it a like and subscribe to the channel. And let me know in the comments what your experiences of making red ales are. Did yours end up having that perfect red hue? Once the water was up to temp, I added my grain bag and grains, stirring regularly to stop clumping. The grains reduced the water's temperature to my target mash temperature of around 65 degrees C. 10 minutes into the mash, I gave the grains a stir and took a sample so to test the mash pH. I use an Apera Instruments pH meter, a link to which is in the description. Healthy mash pH is between 5.2 and 5.5, whereas mine was 6.2 and so needed adjusting. So I added 2 milliliters of lactic acid so to lower the pH. 15 minutes later, I gave the grains another stir, checked on the temperature, and then took another sample to see where the pH was. My pH was still way too high at 5.9, and so I added a few more milliliters of lactic acid to the mash. 10 minutes later, I checked on the mash pH again, and it got to 5.6, which I was much more happy about. Once the overall mash time had got to an hour, I then began the process of mashing out the grains. In this process, you heat the mash up to 77 degrees for 10 minutes, so to denature the enzymes and to stop them converting sugars. After that was done, I then drained the grain bag, squeezed it, and left it to drip for 15 minutes whilst I got the wort boiling. I then poured about 500 ml of boiling water over the grain bag so to extract more sugars and maximise efficiency. Once I had a rolling boil, it was time to start the 60-minute boil and add my first 30-gram hop addition of Fuggle. 15 minutes later, I added my other 35-gram hop addition of Fuggle, as well as my copper cooling coil, so to sanitize it. 10 minutes before the end, I added Irish moss to make the final beer clearer and yeast nutrients so to ensure a healthy fermentation. At the end of the boil, I immediately began cooling the wort, stirring it so to help cool it quicker. Once the water got to 40 degrees Celsius, I added it to the fermenter, allowing some splashing so to help add oxygen. Finally, it was time to add my Lutra yeast, give it a shake, and then put the fermenter onto a heat pad. It took 24 hours before a rapid fermentation was kicking off, and just 6 days after brewing, it was time to bottle. And there it is. That was one of my favourite brew days for a while. I really liked the fact that there was only 2 hop additions. Felt like I wasn't constantly chasing my tail, making sure that the next step was absolutely ready in my hopping schedule. And I also quite liked the fact that I didn't have to do a hop stand or anything like that. So it just meant that the moment that the boil was over, I was just cooling that beer and sticking it in the fermenter. So it felt really fast. It's been about a month since I bottled it, so let's get one open. There it is. First things first, is it red? Yes and no. Yes, it is red. There is red to it. I feel like on camera you might not pick up the redness. There's certainly a red hue to it. It's not the reddest red ale I've ever seen, but I feel like that's because of the Amber Malt. I like the flavour that the Amber Malt has added to this. I've had a few of these already, not today. But yeah, I like the flavour that the Amber Malt has added to this, but maybe it did darken it up. But that said, when I get nice and close, it's red. It is red. Please see that it's red. It isn't orange. It's not brown. It's red. It's holding a nice head. Smells nice and malty. Bit of an iron smell to it, maybe. I also noticed on the brew day, this has just reminded me, Fuggle hops, right? They smell disgusting when they're brewing. I have a real aversion to the smell of them brewing. They smell and taste fine in beer, but is it me? Am I alone in this, or Fuggle hops stink? Lots of other hops smell amazing, but them ugly smells. Anyway, right. So we know it's red. It smells nice. Bit metally, but I think that's okay. It's quite irony. Really interesting to have used Lutra yeast and just to see, again, second time that I've used Lutra and really don't get much yeast character from this compared to Voss, which could almost dominate the smells of some beers. It certainly would have been doing that to this one. All right, let's taste it. Yeah, pleased with that. I like the mouthfeel that it has. I feel like the flaked barley has really given it a kind of grainy, but like smooth mouthfeel to it. It's come out 4.5%, but I feel like the flaked barley is still giving it a nice mouthfeel in it. It tastes a bit thicker than what you might expect from a 4.5% beer. It's nice and old manny. It really tastes like the kind of beer that you would enjoy after a nice long walk in the spring or the autumn, You know, you sit down in an old English pub, there's a roaring fire, and it's got an ale like this available. And the more I sip in it and the more I smell it, I can definitely smell them Fuggle hops. Its clarity is so beautiful. It's very clear. I know it's hard for you to tell how clear it is because it's brown. Well, not brown, red. But yeah, that Lutra is amazing. And there's nothing floating around in it. It is just clear, delicious beer. Pleased with how balanced it is. I think that's really quite an important part to this style. I feel like my granddad would enjoy this. I'd be interested to know what Irish Red tastes like with more modern hops. I know that there's quite a trend in America to try that out. Have I made that up? I like the malt bill. I feel like I'd like to experiment with the hops. And there are those biscuity notes that are coming from the Amber Malt. I feel like the Lutra Kveik yeast is causing the beer to taste more professional. That could also be me doing the pH alterations in the mash. So I think like all of that combining is helping make this beer taste better. I definitely will try and make an Irish Red Ale again, close to St. Patrick's Day next time round. I think I'll probably go for pure Marisota as my base malt. I think I'd like to avoid any darker malts apart from the Flaked Barley next time so that I can make it more red. And maybe I should look into experimenting with different hops in this type of beer. You know, I do feel like some of the more modern hops could potentially boost this, although I don't want to accidentally make it into an IPA. You know, there are plenty of other beers that are using modern hops, so maybe I shouldn't wreck this by using the wrong hops in it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please do give it a like if you enjoyed it and subscribe to the channel. And let me know in the comments if you've ever made a red Irish ale and how you felt about the process. And if you've ever used any other hops apart from Fuggle and did you find better results? I'm not saying that I hate Fuggle, I'm just saying that I feel like it's probably one of my least favorite hops out there. Maybe I've just insulted lots of people by saying that. Hopefully not. I do still like this. Thank you so much for watching this video. Cheers.